9:30. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, I see. I see. It was a tremendous thing. No, this is all right.
Yeah. Sorry. Yes, I'm with you. 100%. Yeah, so yesterday we were I think I felt comfortable with your okay, good. I was trying to get to know I know, that's why it's still like yeah, so it's like that's really yeah, I feel like that's mainly the reason. I also think we do need to have a representation to make sure that everybody can come back and say, well, I'm sorry, you're not an extra power attorney, and they are this, and that way nobody can say that. I think it just kind of evolved into that of like, you know. Yeah, we got no one. Yes, not so how can you expect everybody to buy in? Yeah, when you're holding on.
You're okay? Depends on what happens.
Well, we're going to take public comment at the beginning.
Or the end. Beginning or the end? Yes.
The beginning. We just move it around. Yes. Kurt and we got one. Do you want me to set yeah, I'll be like
And what did
you perfected that. I mean, just in training. Not very good. Yeah.
When it's 5 years old.
You just get out here. I'll watch you walk in.
I'll go do summer tag in this. This is like my third day. They have to do day 35 VBS.
Just check.
We get to go.
Where do you at?
We're
Good.
I got first things ready. It's been a long time doing it, 21-year-old, 19-year-old.
That's what I was thinking. Maybe you could sound like the teacher. Are we? Good to start. Everybody's good. We'll go ahead and get started in the interest of time. Thank you again for being here. We're missing Michael Jones and Bert. They may slide in here. But we've got for Jen, she's got a really, really hard stop. That's 9:30 to go to a ribbon cutting for, investment in Cheltenham area. So we want to make sure that we're mindful of that. So, the good news is I think we finally have come to where all of the information's come to the funnel. So we're going to funnel it out. Some of the questions from our last meeting were to really kind of have Sharon really drill down and say, okay, does transportation meet the statutory requirements? Does land use and infrastructure meet that? And so I'm going to kind of open it up with her to start that. But before we get started, we did have a section for public comment, and Mr. Beck has signed up for public comment. So we've got 3 minutes to give us some feedback. Mr. Beck.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Richard Beck, 356 Riverbird Circle. Do I have to go through this whole thing?
Sing the national anthem.
Yeah.
No, I won't do that. If I do, it'll be the correct words. I didn't prepare anything. I'm going to go off the top of my head. So if I wonder, I don't know, maybe after 3 minutes. But I'm saying, what is this group doing? What have I heard the group do? I just heard a reference to Ms. Crawford. She asked for some specifics. Maybe she's going to get some today. I don't know. What's the group doing? Why is Mooresville trying to get out in front ahead of the state? We're always going to be behind the state. Why don't we ask the state to step it up and say, we aren't going to stop. Stop. The county's already said it's going to be 5-0 for anything, and that's great. So let those by right develop 2 per acre. Let them put their septic in. Let them put their wells in. When the wells go bad, they'll come back to you. When the septic's overflow, they'll come back. But why is the town trying to solve the state's problem? The state needs to get its act together, and we all know that. But we don't call them on it. Maybe it's done indirectly. It's not done publicly that I know of. Maybe I'm not doing the right things or reading the right things, but I'm here at the commission meetings. The only thing I see is planning and development has, I believe, is now slow walking, zoning requests and whatever, and maybe that reason is a limited staff, and that's great. But what's the group doing? What's the thing going for? This is the action item, action item, action item, action item. I said to Mr. earlier. So we give this problem to a bunch of 6th graders that have the answer on the board within an hour. Because they don't have all the background stuff, all the noise behind them, all that we can't do this, we can't do that, oh, they won't like this, they won't like that. Well, darn it, the population doesn't like what's not getting done. It's not getting done. I see on here a communications thing. Water, sewer, speed up plans. Why speed up the plans? Why? You're just going to give the developers more ammo we already have done. Why give them the ammo? Why shoot ourselves in the foot? Need to update the UDO for zoning. Need to change this from 16 per acre. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. 4 per acre, maybe. Let's go to 3 and stop. We'll meet you somewhere. It won't be 2, but it won't be 4. It'll be 3. I'm glad where I'm at, it's 3. And it's nice housing. I see others. Right. So do something. tell us what's going on. So I'm here to talk to the public. I don't know what you're gonna sell. I have no idea what you're gonna sell. Thank you. Well, perfect.
Did good for keeping it 3 minutes, so, super. Good to see you, Bert. We'll just go ahead and start with the public comment, and so at this point, we're really going to drill down to our staff, trying to finalize the required statutory elements, and having Sharon, our town attorney, address the 3 things that seem to be the most popular items of while we're here asking, can we do a moratorium based on these things? And so now, lining those out, Sharon's going to highlight, based on the 4 findings of fact, to be able to do any kind of moratorium to these 3 items that we've identified of interest.
Yes, I'm actually going to start with the second slide. Just pulling back out the resolution that the board adopted when this group was formed, and what the purpose of this group was really to evaluate and explore the feasibility of implementing a development moratorium pursuant to these statutory elements. And just to review these for everyone again, first, and we've talked about this in the meetings that have occurred, but what problems or conditions would necessitate it, and then what course of action have been considered, why those alternatives would not be adequate. 2, you would have to identify development approvals that would be subject to it. And 3, there'd have to be a proposed date determination. And 4, there would need to be actions or a schedule for those actions that would be proposed to be taken by the town to address the problems that were identified that led to the moratorium in the first place. So those are the statutory elements that have we've talked about and have been woven through these discussions. I think I heard from the last meeting, it was stated that the group did not believe that these issues had been met. And maybe, we can talk about that a little bit more detail as to what issues have not been met. But Jen has put together a summary slide from the discussion from the last meeting, summarizing the discussion around transportation, land use, and some ideas for addressing growth management. I think the discussion kind of led toward that. But I will certainly open it up to the group because, this is your working group to determine whether these elements have been met, and, kind of what the consensus of the group is to take back to the Board of Commissioners.
Okay. Excuse me, if you guys are all right, let's kind of just start with the transportation element and looking at the 4 statutory elements. In the presentations that John Young gave to us on all of the transportation networks, it clearly identified that the congested areas that really create a lot of this angst are all DOT roads, and it's kind of based on the 4 findings. In fact, would anybody agree or disagree that transportation, DOT roads are not an item that we could specifically say they need this data?
I agree. In summary, the town has done bonds in the past for smaller portions, but when we look at the number, that 550 million wind plan, which could be well over $1 billion now, doesn't seem realistic that the town would make any type of an impact, right? And at least that's what I hear, and especially when we know that the primary cause is 150. And that until that gets resolved, due to the fact that we have a lake running through the transportation situation here, I don't see, other than recommending that the town continue to pursue small bonding if it makes sense where it can have an impact. If that would be appropriate for a recommendation, that continue to be looked at on a reasonable basis.
Well, I think number 2 addresses what Mike was saying there too, about the fact that essentially what it says is that the town of Mooresville should do everything it can in the areas that it has control over, to be able to address, the issues within its purview, kind of in a prioritized way, essentially that addresses, highest need. One of the offshoots of this, and I don't, it's not something that you probably need to report back to the board, but is that if these NCT DOT projects, let's just take 150 for example, and the Williamson and 150 intersection, there's going to be a tremendous amount of pressure put on the corollary routes, and we may want to look at, some signalization or some routing or signage or things like that in conjunction with the NCDOT to be able to help either people better navigate or even create a podcast. I don't know, something that kind of is an innovative approach to being able to help people understand that this is, and you're going to cuss and fume for a year, but after that, it's going to be better. You might want to try this or that. And I think that the issues of, some of the micro-transit and maybe some of the other kinds of things, some modal choices to help address some of those concerns as they develop, because it's, as these projects roll out, there is going to be pressure on these corollary routes.
Right. Any other comments, questions?
Yeah, and just following up on that, it seems like there'll be a great burden put on Cornelius Road when they start working on 150. In order to get all the way over, what traffic now comes down Kirk Road to 150 is probably going to reroute, as it already kind of does onto that. Having traveled that route a few times, it's going to be really difficult there at the intersection of Cornelius and First Road where there's not a traffic signal. There probably should be one there. Yeah, is it coming? Because, it's just, we know that that's going to be a huge problem. And it's already a problem, it's going to be a huge problem.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
So we'll kind of put those in a parking space to add to our recommendations, back to the board for growth management tactics. Anything else on transportation before we move that? And then on land use, Sharon, can you give us a quick highlight on land use of whether these findings specifically, or that we're able to or not able to have a moratorium just to update?
So I can tell you just by statute that if you were to implement a moratorium, you could not do it for the reason to update a land use plan or update zoning regulations to address residential. You cannot put a moratorium on residential just to update a land use plan. That is prohibited by statute. So I just want to make sure that's clear. I think, the topic here was more from the growth management discussion, and I'm happy, if members of the committee, want to jump in with, why certain elements are met with the statute. But I think this was more geared toward the discussion of growth management, was to update the One Mooresville plan to target high density growth, with areas to address inadequate infrastructure. Also to look at a housing study and update that. And then for zoning, to look at the UDO to target, to address density within the UDO. And I'm sure, the planning can certainly speak more on that topic with respect to growth management issues.
It's interesting how you've written up the line here. I mean, could you talk about that a little bit more?
Which number one?
Update the One Mooresville plan to target high-density growth areas, adequate infrastructure. So, I hear you. Sounds like a plan. Well, we already deal with that, I guess. I'm sorry to jump in, Chairman, but I just, when I read that thing, it sounds really good. The way you combine it with Sharon's comments to remind us about the statute and our ability to it has no impact, it is not a lever towards a moratorium period at all. It's just a separate issue, which, what are the risks and why wouldn't you do this? It's interesting to see it in writing for the first time. Why wouldn't you do this, and what's the risk of doing it? I don't know.
I think that I understand what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, like I think that what this is that the result is that we can't think of any reason with regards to land use that would justify a moratorium under statute. So really the only thing that seems to be available to us with regards to being able to manage that growth are these things. Right. And so on the number one, and I'm going to throw something out there that's probably completely irrelevant, but it's just kind of an idea kind of thing. So, for example, if you wanted to have all your high density growth in infill areas where you already have water and sewer and infrastructure and stuff like that, instead of putting it in areas where that is not existing, then the board could decide, and they might want to do completely the opposite. They could decide, well, why don't we look at allowing a discount on taps for water sewer taps. Let's say it's going to be $38,000, and so we'll make it $21,000 because it's in an existing area, and so they can buy taps and improve at a discount or whatever to be able to utilize the existing infrastructure that's there. So that's kind of what it sounds like to me. So you're saying look at these things that can either incentivize or discourage certain types of uses without making everything a conditional zone.
That's interesting. I saw that.
That's what I was thinking, that as you listed this out, this was from our discussion on the recommendations back, that through that one more plan that would really drive that plan to where high density works and what, to define what high density maybe, Mr. Beck's point, every 16 years for a person to reduce what that is, but really driving that to where there's already the infrastructure in place. So we'll kind of put that onto the growth management recommendation.
Great comment.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other question about ladies?
Just a quick, and then maybe for Randy, and the one morsel plan, so going back in time a little bit, so the one morsel plan was handed forward, it was a very dense document, it was put out a little bit differently, we didn't digest it as like we did UDO, break it out into so many different segments. So it is one morsel plan, and it predates you guys, but did it, when we were looking at it, did it take into account of any of the road network or the infrastructure around it? Versus like, if someone is driving 18, 16 years an acre, especially in corridors where, how does it change? Or does it look into the future versus, Akisa Pharma, Highway 21, that nothing's really going to change for years and years and years. Does it ever take that into account?
If I can start, and then you jump in, I came at the very tail end of that. So I sat on the last public meeting, I was not an employee yet, but I came over and watched it. In my opinion, did it take into account? Yes, because if you look at where all the nodes are located, they are located on those areas where there should be adequate infrastructure to account for the growth of those nodes. What it did not take into account is NCDOT's ability to keep up with the development in the area. So I would answer, I hate to say it, but yes and no. The nodes are logically placed, and the plan makes sense from that standpoint, but the NCDOT plans to keep up with that were not adequate, and you feel free to jump in.
I would agree, and I think the update we're working on now needs to take it to the next level down. So the one Mooresville plan, the intent was, it looked at utility infrastructure to make sure it was adequate, which where the tiered growth map came from, as we use granulation consideration. Well, that's not quite right. So some of the information used in it wasn't quite refined enough, I don't think, to really get us where we wanted to go. But the intent of it was, is what you all are talking about this morning, was to identify areas that could support higher density growth and identify those as nodes, which then the UDO was drafted to reflect, and higher density is concentrated in those nodes, which is intended to be mixed-use walkable urban centers that have the adequate infrastructure to support the growth. But there definitely does seem to be a disconnect between reality and what was used in drafting the one Mooresville plan when it was drafted. And it's DOT delays and other things we need to look at a little bit more closely.
Well, I know coming out of the retreat that you will record, it's going to break it up into more sections. And I can definitely digest my ward hotspots a whole lot easier than I can take the whole document and try to help everything. So I think that's a big part of it. I think it all kind of goes back together. But what's those road networks around these spots you're talking about? Are they adequate, or do they need to be R2 or whatever? But I think I'm somewhat at fault on the one Mooresville plan and a complete understanding. But you learn as you go. But I don't think we spend as much time as we should, especially in segment 4 of my area versus here's the entire town and you're trying to absorb it all at one time.
So and the other thing is I know we talked about one Mooresville plan a lot, but really a lot of the development that's going on right now is nothing to do with one Mooresville plan. It all started before the one Mooresville plan. And so we just want to make sure the one Mooresville plan gives us the ammunition we need to manage it. But part of that is going to be potentially a lot of work and going back and looking at what the by rights are out there right now. Having attended a meeting recently where there's a high density development going in out on Hollow Creek, about Harris Farm. That was approved in 1998. got nothing to do with this board, it's got nothing to do with the Mooresville plan, but it's the by right. And what we don't know is how many more of those are sitting out there that are approved, that are high density, developments that we don't know about. You know.
Danny, so I guess, right?
Right.
You'll be getting the list of those tomorrow.
Good. But that's, we don't know. Yeah, but that's part of the structure. And going and telling, look at this, going backwards and looking at what's been approved previously as by right, and then figure out if we have a good legal way of going back and limiting that before development gets started. Because I gotta tell you, I was shocked. Harris Farm was shocked. Everybody was shocked, and suddenly all these duplexes and townhomes started going in with this high density, and we didn't know this stuff.
That happens a lot throughout town. So does anybody else have any thoughts about those land use fit or not fit into the statutory requirements for the more home? Everybody agree that by itself does not give us statutory authority to meet all the homes by
I agree.
Moving on to the other infrastructure needs, we have some great presentations about the school systems, ops, posted on water and sewer. Based on the findings of fact, Sharon put us here, put that on the infrastructure and what the information we need.
I think we've heard, presentation from police and fire and water sewer that, the town is not lacking. Not a public safety concern, not issues with water sewer capacity. That's my recollection from the presentation that we heard from council and chiefs. I think, the discussion then led to the last meeting, whether the growth and strategies to other infrastructure, if there are.
So in your opinion, based on what the, again, I keep using findings of fact, statutory elements that we really didn't uncover actually glaring, to say, okay, this would fit in statutory elements because of, so, does everybody agree that, on the other infrastructure being state of water, sewer, public safety, that based on the information we heard, none of those reports would warrant meet the findings?
Well, not for the whole town, but is there a possibility it could be applied to pieces of the town? So for example, if you go into the south of Mooresville, where we're proposing to put Station 7, but we don't really have an effective way of doing that right now. And it's already stretching the fire department down there, and as we look at additional growth in that area, I'm concerned that at this juncture, after hearing from the fire department, that is an issue. That it would be fire station for some, that remedy that issue, but we don't have a complete a way to deal with it.
So your question, are we able to do spot moratorium?
Yes, that's my question.
Per the statute, it's not limited to a certain area. If you can identify a problem that necessitates a flow of certain development approvals within that area, and then you identify what the town will be doing to address that problem, yes, that you can do that.
I was just going to say, we do have a site for Station 7, and funds are in the budget. Where it's not in the budget right now is every time we open a station, it's a little more than $1 million to staff that station. But we do have a site and funds in the budget to build the station. We're really needing to wait on what's the status of East West Connector, because if it connects to that, we don't want to spend extra money on a road. It needs to be timed, as does the development. Anything that occurs down there all needs to be timed so that it hits at the same time. The road needs to be in place, the station needs to open, and any development can occur thereafter.
Just one question on that is, could that be contested because of our reciprocal, call it reciprocal agreement with Mount Warren? I don't know if that's what the proper name is, but is it that service for the call?
We do.
So we do have adequate service in that area. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that agreement, but if it could be shown that, yes, you can provide our service in this area, that's fine.
Then you get sued. It's the mutual aid agreement.
Mutual aid.
Yes,
I
it is.
can take a look at it. Yeah. With that, with that, so I guess the short question was, can you give us an area? You can't designate one area, but you then have to meet all of these. You do of why, and we've heard Mr. Henry that Plan for Station 7 is already well on the way.
The challenge I would make for that piece on Station 7, it's on land that doesn't have street access to it. And so that's not, nothing, you know.
Right.
But that's, to me, that's not a plan, that you have a piece of land to build a station on. You have no way for the fire truck to get out of the station.
Yeah, and we can follow up on that minute, Two things. One is I think, you know, what you're saying is important because we need to communicate that to the board that, yes, if there's a particular area that's got difficulty as a tool, you can use the moratorium for that particular area if you meet these criteria. You know, the second is that one of those criteria, you might put that back up there, is it says that the actions and the schedule for those actions proposed to be taken by the town through the direction of the moratorium to address the problem or condition leading to the imposition of the moratorium. You can't go on forever.
That's right.
So the town has to be in a position to say, here's the plan, let's do a moratorium and implement this. And so, what I think I heard Mr. Heeman say is we're not quite there. And we may never get there because we've got this plan, but we're not quite there yet. And that doesn't prevent the board, I think, from denying a zoning application or whatever it is on an individual basis because the infrastructure is not there to support it. So you can, again, that may not justify a moratorium because you've got methods in there that you can use today to help alleviate that situation. So,
Yes,
So you talked about obviously the loading area in the semi-rural, but in all honesty, the board's actually been doing that. So we've held 115 back as much as we can under the Faith Road corridor, basically from fire protection standards. And so I don't know how many developments we've denied over the course of time down there, but it's been a significant amount. So the board's already using that tool, if you will, now. You don't quote having this up on the moratorium, but 115 would be probably, I don't know, at least a quarter way full today if we wouldn't have ever done that. So even though there's not a moratorium in place, we've been leveraging, there's no inadequate fire service down there or response time or going beyond the 4 to 5 minutes or something. So we use that tool. Now we haven't outlined it like this, which is something that, you know, honestly, we've been doing that.
like do annexation.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to be challenged on that. So.
So we can add to the list of recommendations of road management to see if there is a glaring area that could meet the findings of that spot. Other questions, comments? That's what
I was just going to say that I think that's an important thing to emphasize when you have these conversations, because people don't come to every meeting, and so they don't see that over time, but for the commissioners to just say, you know, these are the tools that we've had at hand, these are the tools that we're using, this is why we're using them, because we are anticipating that, you know, this is going to be an issue, and we still have some things to work out in terms of road to a fire station or whatever, because I think you all know that, but I don't know that the public necessarily understands the strategy or reasoning behind that. They just see a per project. So that's just an audience feedback.
You're 100% right. 100% right.
And when you're dealing with the issue, you're dealing with the issue. You're not dealing with the broader conversation always. So you may.
Explain it, but as far as it's one at a time. And it's a very slow process. What you're saying, that's your 100% right.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you get the story out where everyone says, hey, read this. Take 2 minutes.
I think sometimes, and I find that's what I do in incentives, and Bert knows, I read, most of my commissioners ask me to. I won't just go off and do this. But I will share why we do incentives, how we do incentives, how they work. Because whoever's sitting in the meeting at the time, it's like you're talking to a parade. You have new people coming in all the time. So we just remind them, we don't spend a lot of time on it, but we emphasize, here's kind of just a reminder. And I think it helps. I feel like I do it every time now, but it's because people are asking the questions. So for what it's worth.
Great point. Any other?
Would we then say that, do we recommend then that with regard to this particular area, there may be an opportunity, if the statute can be passed, if it would be beneficial to the efforts that are already in place on growth in that area, or something of that nature? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and I just quickly kind of wrote it down as we get to the list that we're going to make for recommendations, that to look at a spot or an area that may be the infrastructure challenges
Would
for
be
more.
specific.
It could be the Lane Creek area, it could be, Cornelius Road, and where are the areas that, that we don't have adequate facilities yet. But it has to then you do the moratorium for a specific area, you have to have, then we're going on the hook. So you say here, in this amount of time, we're going to have a road done, a fire station, and all this. So then the clock starts ticking on the town.
Really, northwest and southwest are the 2 areas where we don't have the coverage that we would like to have right now.
The board is going to tell them those that, but
But it could be like 150. Well, I'm not construction on that, but then again, we can't say one place and,
And I would be remiss not to say, the school's starting up very soon, 150, you've got 2,000 children funneling into Lake Norman High School, thousands of people funneling into Lakeshore Middle and Lakeshore Elementary School, and that was, in the very first presentation, that was the red on the map. And I do, if you've ever spent any time on that road before school, with the 16-year-olds racing around, I do think it is, I think it's dangerous, so I think that if we're going to point out specific places, I think that is an important place. I will say that the principal of Lake Norman High School has said it is not a matter of if we are going to lose a child on that road. It is a matter of when. It is very dangerous. Those children are running across the street. They are swerving. It's so frustrating to get to school there. So I do think that's a safety issue. And if we're going to specifically point out those things, that would be a piece of our contribute.
I guess
Yes. Yep, go ahead.
so if there's any possibility of putting another entrance into that high school instead of just having the one entrance.
There really isn't. There's discussion about something, another road, an egress type road, had to do with, not being able to get access. That's an age-old story with a race car driver who had some land over there. That's, but no, we have We can't put any more children in that building. It is full. We can't add any more children. So it is as full as it can be. The thing that we are concentrating on more is parking. So we don't have enough places for these folks to park, and so what happens is they're parking at the Dario. They're parking at the Harris Teeter. Yeah, so, yeah, and they're also parking at the Dario because they can get to school more quickly by parking at the Dario and running across the road than they can to get on campus, because it is, it's a cluster, I mean, truly. But we've explored every option that we have in that regard. The traffic on that road is unbearable. I mean, and it's only for a very small window of time. I mean, I'm sure you guys do it. If I need to go that way and it's 7:30, 7:45 in the morning, I go a different way. But if you ever just for fun want to see how bad it is, I mean, I've also been at Lake Norman when the kids are trying to run in to not be tardy, and they literally spend an hour getting to school because they're sitting in traffic, and they're running in to not get a tardy slip. So it's frustrating on a whole bunch of different levels, but very dangerous.
Say one last thing, and then, because this is kind of off topic, and it would seem to me that if you're not in discussions with NCPOT right now with regards to what the improvements, the timing of the improvements right there, you need to be doing something right
At
away.
our last, one of our last TAC meetings, with Division 12, on a quarterly basis, we brought that up. And they said they would be open to working with the school and the sheriff's department or state highway patrol to control that light during
Yes.
peak times. So hopefully somebody in the facilities or whoever.
Yes, and we are having some of those discussions, but it's,
We need help with that.
but you know, it's that whole thing where you say, oh, and yes, we are having that discussion. We've been having that discussion for a long We actually have a later start time. We actually have started later at Lake Norman High than any of our other high schools, simply because the main thing was everybody was tardy. They just could not get to school, so we've adjusted the start times.
So that's another maybe a spot area. That just becomes a challenge. We can't control anything on that.
We have restricted to senior only parking or to the number of parking spots we have now.
I would say something earlier that didn't let Lawrence go from. So we couldn't take a health and safety issue like this and build a moratorium in the area. I mean, you know, this is the only meeting that I was at where we had a full house and the discussion was all about safety on 150 and Purple. I mean, before we had the 3 minute limit, we were here late at night listening to that. I'm sure you guys would too.
I think the short answer to that is that if you're willing to fund, take responsibility for building the required infrastructure to solve the problem, then you might be able to meet the requirements up there.
You can't paint on, I didn't think so, but I needed to hear it.
That doesn't mean that there aren't things that you could do, but that's not part of what this discussion
Yeah,
is.
won't be the statutory. Any other comments or anything on the other infrastructure with regards to the statutory requirements? Does everybody agree that, unfortunately, especially on the schools, public safety and water, that anything that's in our purview to be able to do the moratorium really doesn't fit? That we wouldn't be able to use that other infrastructure needs for doing moratoriums, so I believe that. Originally, as we all.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? It has to be a problem now, right? It's not an anticipated problem. It's a problem that we're facing right now, so you can't serve somebody. Or you are out of water, or you're out of sewer, or, whatever to carry it. And that fire can't reach these people. It's not an issue that is gonna be. it's an issue now, right?
That's why you can't fund plans. That's your
Right.
responsibility anyway.
And I just say that out loud because I think that there are some areas where we're starting to see issues, but it's not a now issue, it's a thing that we're seeing coming. Is that,
Would you agree with that, Sharon? Or is it more that, yes, we can see the problem, but we then have to say how we're gonna fix it and when?
Yeah, I don't think it has to be a now problem. Like, if you anticipate that your water capacity is going to be an issue in shooters, you know, you could certainly, I think, implement a moratorium to address that before you're, got capacity. I don't think it has to be a now problem, but it does have to be something that you would identify as a problem, yes, a problem, and then there has to be steps that the town would take to address it.
got it? Okay, I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
I was always thinking of it as a now problem.
Other questions, comments on it? Last question about this, and then we kind of move on to that. So to kind of close the question of, based on what we've studied, heard from, all of that, is everybody in agreement that at this point we don't have the elements that would be able to warrant a recommendation for the board to look at a moratorium? Everybody in agreement with that?
I mean, the more we talked this morning, and you got infrastructure needs and stuff like that, I see that you do have it. I'll be honest.
Talk to that. Talk.
You got the infrastructure needs of the fire stuff, the fire protections, everything. Okay. You've got the station that you just spoke about. You've got infrastructure needs with what you've already got in the pipe. And we've got to look at what's in the pipe. How much is in the pipe as far as residential apartments right now that's not in the ground, not coming up?
So we don't, some of those numbers are including what's going up, what's already up, and it also includes single family. I can look it up real quick.
The number was 16,600 that was presented in the.
So that includes single family, multi-family, that includes Gamble Forest that's partially finished, but people are living there.
Yeah.
It includes stuff that hasn't broken ground. So it's a very big bucket. But somewhere in that 15,000.
I mean, that's additional residents to you all. That's what we call serious infrastructure needs. And you can base it on infrastructure, like Dick already said, you clearly got those needs there.
But we have to prove that it's
That would be the town
Problem
board's
and the-
discretion, I think, there. But, I mean, to be honest, I think me sitting here and looking at the growth and looking on the county side, hearing everything that's going on, hearing what's in the pipe, 16,000, I think the recommendation from this meeting ought to be that a moratorium is recommended to the town based on infrastructure needs. And then the town needs to sit down with town staff and figure out if there are hot spots that need to be addressed. And until that can be addressed with infrastructure needs and moratoriums in place for all new developments.
Madam Chair, can I comment on? I understand your point, or I think the statute is designed to say that, okay, the town's responsibility is to plan for and address these issues on a regular basis in the normal working budget. And so if you can say that you're not able to do those things in the normal working budget, or if it's gotten to the point that, you're not able to manage it with the normal working budget, then you need to prove to me that that's the case, and that you are going to be declaring a moratorium because you've got the money and you want to spend it and fix these problems. So, and I don't think that we're at that point. I think your idea, of course, is a good one, but it's not a zero-sum game today. The town works, goes on, has the plans, has the money in the budget, has projects coming along with NCDOT, so I think.
But if you put the 16,000 in the mix and whatever else is being approved every single day or every single week, that's where you start to get behind.
I understand that point, but I think, you know, those plans and that budget's built on the fact that we know we've got these kinds of things going on.
Yeah, I understand that, and so I completely understand that. Everybody talks about roads. It's not your responsibility to go out here and to deal with state roads. Because once you take that on, that is taken on a whole different angle. And once you take that on, you know that. Once you take that on, the state's going to say, well, they can build wrong roads, they can build wrong roads. So you know what's going to happen there. So I clearly see, based on what I've been looking at, based on what I heard this morning, I clearly think that you could do the moratorium based on infrastructure needs. And I think that needs to come from this committee.
Madam Chair, can I make a comment?
Yes.
Really, a few things. If you go back to police and fire presentations, those have accounted for the growth. Every time the board, and we were asked this early on, I'll use water sewers as a great example. So we're asked by the board, you know, what about water and sewer? We have accounted for, with the formula, every proposed unit in water and sewer. We have adequate water sewer to serve everything that's in the pipeline. We're not at risk of doing what happened with the Rocky River system. So we have adequate water sewer. Police and fire, you heard from them that they do not feel that there are issues related to serving the additional areas. And I will refer back to the comment about the south area. Do we need a fire station down there? Absolutely. Can we continue to serve what's down there right now without severe issues? Absolutely. If it grows, are we going to need another fire station? Absolutely. Do we have plans to build it? Do we have funds to build it in the budget? Absolutely. So, you know, in my opinion, from police, fire, water, sewer standpoint, it's difficult to make that argument when all those things, like the school system talked about, have been taken into account. That's, you know, just my thought is.
And that's really my point, Bert, is that, you know, if you were going to be able to, you know, justify based on those required statutory elements, I think you'd be not just shaky ground, but untenable ground with regards to being able to declare a moratorium. And I think the desire to declare one is a noble desire, and that our energies would be best spent for the citizens to pull back from that and say, okay, let's just admit it. We can't meet these statutory elements. But what we can do is we can take a serious look at what the current plans are and how they address what's in the pipeline, and like that number 2 before over there, in the context of our plans, what revisions can be made using these growth management tools. So I think we need to have a discussion about these growth management tools in a way to kind of meet somewhere halfway, 2/3 of the way, that desire that you have that's justifying a moratorium. But I just don't see, frankly, that we would be able to meet any of those.
Well, you've seriously got a serious problem. And that's why the committee was formed.
Right.
That's why everyone's coming to the town and complaining. That's why you've got the problems on 150. You've got 16,000 more coming. You're meeting the statutory requirement, in my opinion, when it comes down to infrastructure. Yes, we've got police coverage, we've got fire coverage, but you can't get there, you can't get there. So when does that become a public safety problem as well? Another thing to look at, Danny, right now, if I own 200 acres on 150, and it's in the town of Louisville, and I come to you all and I say, I want to put an apartment complex, apartments all in that, y'all are going to start the approval process, or start the process, correct? I raise my case. You need to put a moratorium in place.
Can I make a comment?
Go ahead.
I mean, I just can't get past, to me, I can't get past the statute. You know, I'm sorry, but, Bert, I mean, I love where you're going, but I don't think it works, because you, number one, you have got to say what you're going to do to fix the problem. And the problem is the roads. It doesn't say, it says we can't stop developing because we can't control what needs to be done to stop, to put the moratorium in. It's, the state has already put it out of our control because it's a property state. Property rights comes above the other rights. So this was developed to make it hard, like Bill said, to prove you just can't arbitrarily do this. And I personally cannot get over that the handcuffs are on us. And I like the safety thing is the only little issue that I think is not little. I think it's a big issue, especially up at the schools that are like virtual over 150. But I'm not hearing anybody saying that would work because we can't, again, control what needs to be done. And if we can't say, we're going to be locked, I don't see the commission agreeing to do anything, that there isn't a concrete plan, that they at least have 50% probability that they're going to do it. And the only way you write this now is say, we're going to have a moratorium until DOT gets their job done. That didn't comply. I don't see it. I'm sorry, Bert, but I just, honestly, I don't. I think all these other things are good, but if I could then just then, you're ready to move on. I know you are. Well, I got your acreage out on 150, and I need to. Are we going to talk a little about annexation and any recommendation to the town board about?
Yeah, on our list of growth management tools.
About annexation, because you know, if that 150 acres is out there, whatever you said, 58, whatever it is, or is it in the town or isn't it in the town? I mean, are we going to make a strong suggestion regarding annexation? Because they don't come in wanting to put 2 houses an acre on that property. They never do. And then the other thing, crazy thought I had this morning, is would we encourage communities that are already there, where we only supply water and sewer? They don't want to come in because they don't want your taxes, our taxes. But what if they did? Or would we want to encourage that kind of growth? As opposed, is there any way to encourage that kind of big question? So I don't expect an answer from everybody today, but I don't think we get a lot of, or anybody coming in from the farms.
We had a few calls from them last summer, and I will tell you when their bills went up considerably, that option was thrown out to them. Yes, there's a way for you to come in and receive city town services, and the answer was, once they penciled it, the answer was, we'll pay our high water bills. Thank you.
Yes, I mean, that's the kind of stuff you would want to take. You would want to take for growth, because you're going to get the taxes. But they don't want to come in, so they're not asking. So almost everything that comes to annex that isn't in the town. So we can deal with, simplified in my mind, we can deal with by right, by the one Mooresville plan, the UDO, let's take a hard look at it, let's see where we're at. And we could deal with annexation if we were willing to do that, you know, to take a hard line on fighting that. We're in those areas where we don't have the infrastructure to currently to do it, and there seems to be a lot of them, more of those areas than other areas.
This is for Sharon again. So this whole scenario here is outlined in this statute. This thing was figured out before we ever sit down in this room. And we all know that. And I guess, and so the problem
it's a statute. I agree with Bert, there's some hot spots in town, maybe or something. I tell you, the board's already leveraged that on, at least in my area. I guess my question, Sharon, is could the town of Mooresville challenge the statute? Could you physically say, we're a building state, you hold us NCDOT, you hold us this accountability, but we've all seen rescue go past us trying to get somewhere, and a minute later, there are 3 cars in front of us. A child is something's going to happen. Someone's going to burn up in a car because someone can't get there. So, the problem is this. Is there a way, if nothing else, you may lose, but is there a way to send a message, say, you hold us accountable for all this, we need to hold you accountable for machinery on the ground that says, we need these dozers, we need it not now, we need it yesterday, so get moving. Legally, is there something that we can do? Now, like I said, we may lose, but at least we said,
Put the moratorium in place.
we tried.
It gives you time enough to go ahead and figure out what you've got to do to fix the growth problems.
So we can't do that based on this. The moratorium has to include specific language, right? Here's the problem, here's how we're gonna fix it, we're gonna have it done by.
I agree with everybody. There's nothing here that says, boom, there it is. Maybe a little pocket or something.
Would that pocket suffice for that? If they've got hot spots in the town?
If you can meet each of these elements and define what actions the town would take to address what led to the stop on it.
Could the lights on 115, the lights that y'all want to adjust and put in, could that mean some of that as well for public safety?
If the town took over and defined, here's the schedule of actions that are going to be taken, here's the lengths of time that it's going to take to do it. That if you can meet each of those elements and find, okay, what development committees are going to be subject to it, sure, if you can justify each of those statutory elements. Get back to your question, Mr. Daniel. This is put in place by the General Assembly. The only way to change a law is to have the General Assembly do so. And these are the parameters that they put on local governments act within the parameters that are outlined by the General Assembly. But if you can come up with facts that meet each of these elements, there's pocket areas where the town can address certain things, and you can meet it, then say, yeah, we can put it in. Now, would someone challenge it? Sure. Somebody's not happy with that, but that's litigation. We deal with that all the time.
Y'all are getting challenged because you're denying, so you're gonna get challenged either way you do.
But there needs to be, you would certainly have to support each of these with detailed findings as to, what are the problems, what schedule of actions are going to be taken to fix the problem that was ahead of us.
Thank you. To accommodate kind of what Bert was saying is that I think it would be fair to say that as for a town-wide moratorium, we don't see any way that we can meet the required statutory elements. But we would suggest that in areas that have hot spots, that you think that the required statutory elements could be met, that the town board consider using a moratorium in those areas to address.
Does everybody agree with that?
Pretty close.
Yeah.
So, one thing I would say, and keep quiet because it's really part of it, but so one thing I'll be cautious of is any recommendation that is made related to an NCDOT road or street is no different than any other DOT thing you're doing. It's because, again, just because the town board chooses to move forward with an action on an NCDOT road, you're still going through the process. So, I would caution to say just because the DOT has not moved forward with the project doesn't mean that the town's going to be able to move forward with it any quicker or slower in any form. So, making a recommendation even in a small area that's related to, back to the 150 example, which we always do, but related to a 150 example the town is choosing to take over and do some kind of plan for, is still going to require the same steps.
And maybe we should exclude transportation in that. Yeah.
Maybe just use the public safety, or the infrastructure for public
Yeah.
safety.
Yeah, because, I mean, that's a really good point, because you've got laws that have to be met, federal laws and stuff like that, so.
Did you kind of capture all that as we?
And that applies to section 7 too, right?
For
Not just one.
For public safety.
Public safety, because
So, to restate what you said and help me out here, Bill, that the town-wide moratorium that you really can't meet the merits and the elements of the storage. Yeah, and that perhaps the board consider areas that have inadequate infrastructure.
Public safety.
Public safety that support public safety.
That was a good point. You must have had your coffee with me.
Not only one cup, I mean,
There you go. So, based on that statement that Bill made, how we revised it, so everybody can agreement that sums up, probably all that thumbs up for everything. And then what I want to do for the next little bit is to put together that recommendations for growth management measures to the board. And before Jim has to run out, we want to have to present this to the town board as far as our findings. And if it's okay with you guys, I kind of volunteered Mr. Cole that he could be our spokesperson, unless anybody else has a strong recommendation or that they really have strong want to do that. I'd like to, if Les could do that as electors, but kind of summarize all this and present it. Have a strong desire to do that. Felt like you were kind of like the one with the biggest arm's length deal with that. So really present our recommendation, kind of summed it up on this last statement, and then we'll get this list together and based on whatever the agenda timeframe, August, is that August 7th? August 7th. And anybody that's available that comes to the meeting that night, we'll do it at as a presentation at the beginning of the meeting. So, it won't be an agenda item, just be a recommendation based on this. Now we're going to compile the list of everything that we've heard to recommend to the board for the growth management.
Recognition or a suggestion, just to think about it, is just if you're willing, maybe you have a draft that everybody can look at.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And then if there are comments, not that at that point we'd be putting in a lot of general comments, but in case we miss something or any feelings that anybody has, so everything's on board.
Jen, do you have anything else you want to add to the growth management suggestions? We talked a lot about communicating the tools, continuing transportation volume in private areas that we can control, updating the one more plan, really a deeper dive down into the individual boards, DBDO, and really also looking at what's already approved by right, getting a clear annexation policy and really targeted areas that we want or don't want, working closely with the county and their updating their land use and zoning, looking closely at the spot areas for moratorium, being public safety, and that's first 150s, landfill areas, whatever that is. Those are the quick ones that we
I don't have anything to add.
certainly want to be, the growth that we want is jobs.
Well, you need residential too.
Yeah,
So, in order for people to work here, so we're growing, so, with both hands. But no, I have nothing to add.
maybe I'll just look out this one.
Yeah.
What else did we have on the list for recommendations to the board for growth management tactics? What I missed in your agenda?
Probably all on paper, but
And I'll send out a draft.
I think you mentioned, we are going to mention annexation, right?
Yeah, annexation policy, that can be used to.
Annexation is what strong suggestions for annexations come forward.
But this balance, we just mentioned here, I guess in terms of enough housing for the jobs now and in the future, we do have a model for that. I mean, right? I mean, we do have a model. It's not something we don't know. So we don't know it empirically, but we do have a model for as we want to bring in commercial, we want to bring in industrial, we have places for them to be, and how do we stack up against the housing that's in the pipeline to supply the workforce for that versus the 14,000 coming across at 150 every day.
That was a great point, because if you don't have the housing, that just means more people drive in for the employment.
But I'm saying, I'm asking you, because we do have an idea of where we are, don't we? Or don't we?
As far as enough housing to
How much
support growth?
Yes, it's support industry today and growth. I mean, it seems like something that you would have. I'm asking if you have it. If you don't have it, should we have it?
That's like part of the updated housing.
Yeah, I mean, should we know that today we can, we know how many commercial jobs there are. And we know, I don't know, somebody's smart enough to put that together, probably somebody from Danny Group or something, I don't know, but to be able to say, today, we can support 50% of the workers that are needed in this area. I mean, it's never going to be a right answer, but.
Yeah. This sounds like brainstorming that we could probably do outside of a meeting, and because I think it's more germane to discussions about how, the granular issues related to growth management. And so, if you feel.
I agree, Bill. I'm sorry that brought it up.
But we may want to take 10 minutes after this meeting and sit down and bounce some of that stuff around. But I agree with your recommendation.
Well, I'm not asking to put it on the list. It was just brought up here, you're going to keep going because you've got to have the workers. Well, all I can see in my mind is the apartments on 150 and the apartments here, that are going up and that aren't built and saying, well, really, how many more do we need? Who knows the answer to that question?
Now, we're going to talk to you about that after the outside of this meeting.
No, I'm sorry.
That's where you like to do one of those reporting.
Well, I think it's germane to exactly that's why I'm bringing it up. As you're looking at this, you don't want to strangle the growth by not having enough housing. That's the last thing you want. Anyway, you're right.
But I talked a little bit too about how to make that happen.
I think that we'll maybe end up with out of this is some subcommittees that will help with the recommendations to the board. So we're adding to this kind of the takeaway list that's sorry. What else do we need?
I just want to reiterate that Iowa State Schools appreciates the CP table. We really do.
I know we learned a lot from his recommendation, but kind of ended up with here, both of those presentations.
Keep inviting us. Bruce Doyle's used to call me one of the others. But keep inviting us, because the others we're pretty nice.
Don't run away after return.
Yeah, exactly.
I would say as well, we appreciate the this table, and to the earlier discussion, everything has a ripple effect. Affordable housing is a huge issue for us. So I want to make sure we don't solve one problem and create another problem, because our folks right now are traveling in because they can't go to. So we need to think about what types of housing options are available.
All about that.
anything on the list? Marking our spokesman, so we're gonna circulate the list, is that right? Everybody kind of, if there's something we missed on there, please respond back. And if you're able to come to that August 7th meeting, that'd be great. We covered a lot of options.
They start night school, it's late morning.
Yeah.
The kids would be late, they'd probably do better.
I like that.
You're laughing about that, but
That's not
they didn't
bad.
consider shifts up anyway.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna stand adjourned, be prepared that you make it, so come back for some, definitely when we're updating the, one more plan to be where we've got a great source of our people. With some input on, with that, so thank you all for a lot of hours of service what was this, anything?
Everybody does.
It's all John Young's fault.
That's right.
It's all Dave's fault. That's one more thing that comes through. Well, let's see.
Is that our last meeting?
Yeah.
One more school.
And that's the committee, we wanted to screw that, to the point, it wasn't really green or down to the committee level, they, you know, like, everyone just kind of came in and said, here, what do you think about this? I don't know. Yeah. Is there any update on, one contract or our company?
We have interviews set up. Slip burn.
Hopefully that's. So, it sounds like for both school systems, we just need that probably above grade separation. So to speak, and literally.
They need to walk everyone 50, right?
And when we talk about it, the thinking that, and that's not far-fetched, they're indoor, walking, not far-fetched.
It's a big issue for us.
I mean, that's some big,
Yep, yep. Yep, I agree.
that'd be cool.
That's one of the, we'll figure it out.
Good, good. I don't get it.